Hello and welcome. What form of action by Palestinians could cause Israel to change its course? The villagers of Budrus in the West Bank discovered, surprisingly, that it was more effective to stage non-violent protests to prevent Israel's separation wall tearing up their lands. The story is told in a new acclaimed documentary, Budrus, which goes candidly behind the scenes of what happened. The documentary centers around community organizer Ayed Morrar, who decides to act against Israel's decision to build a wall through his community, uprooting thousands of olive trees and destroying the main source of income for the locals. Ayed and his teenage daughter rally every man, woman and child in Budrus for a series of peaceful sit-in demonstrations. The movement grows and succeeds in uniting all Palestinian factions, including the bitter rivals of Fatah and Hamas. And soon, European activists and Israelis cross into Palestinian territory to join the struggle. At one point, the protests do turn violent, with Palestinian men throwing stones and Israeli forces responding with rubber bullets and live ammunition. But as more people mobilize in front of the army bulldozers, forming human barriers, the Israeli government is forced to reroute the wall from the West Bank to the Green Line. Today we ask, could the success of Budrus serve as an example for other Palestinians to embrace a path of non-violent resistance against the Israeli occupation? Remember, you can join our conversation with your questions and comments. You can send an SMS or an email and we'll take your comments as well. Now, I'm joined by the Brazilian filmmaker Julia Bacha, who directed and produced Budrus, and Israeli activist and writer Ronit Avni, who is the executive producer of the documentary. She's also the founder of Just Vision, an organization that supports peaceful initiatives to resolve the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. With her is Ayed Morrar, whose non-violent resistance against Israel inspired Budrus. They're all in New York. I welcome you all to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you, Riz.
Julia, can I start with you? It's good to have you back on, and I want to get from you a take on what made you do this documentary. What was it about this story that made you want to tell it?
We really wanted to tell a story of success, of Palestinians and Israelis who decided to unite and together managed to achieve their goals. And I think the story really focuses on crossing boundaries. There's the gender boundary that is crossed with the participation of women. There's the political boundary crossed where, as you mentioned, Hamas and Fatah collaborated together and worked towards a common goal. And obviously the nationality boundary where Israelis crossed into the West Bank to demonstrate side by side with Palestinians. There was such a rich story in this one village. You could encapsulate really what's possible to happen in the Middle East.
How were you able to, Julia, how were you able to film it so candidly? And I guess, I mean, you know the land, you know the people. Was there anything that surprised you about the story as it started to unfold?
We really collaborated with about 12 different activists, Israelis and internationals, who were activists during the demonstrations and who were carrying cameras to document what was happening, not to make a film, but to try to lower the level of violence and to have documentation if something happened and they wanted to show it to the media or take it to the courts. And I think what was amazing for me was to find the degree of mobilization that this village managed to do. Despite only having 1,500 people, almost every day someone was carrying the camera. And that's why the film itself really feels like you're in the moment following the story. You don't know what's going to happen. There's moments of tension. It can almost work as a fiction film. And I think that's the appeal of it. And we're hoping that we can get wide distribution.
Well, Ronit Avni, congratulations again. You're involved in this too. I wonder when you look at this kind of film and what it could achieve, what do you think it could do in terms of really changing the dynamics on the ground in terms of the relationship between Israelis and Palestinians?
We wanted to tell a story that would inspire people and to give them a sense of what is possible. And our intention in taking the film around is to actually give people a lens into the power and possibility of this kind of nonviolence movement. So as far as I'm concerned, people learning more about the issue, people wanting to join, people gaining respect for the kind of work that Ayed and the other Palestinian villagers and activists demonstrated, I think that those would be key to strengthening and supporting a nonviolence movement.
And Ronit, to what degree does this actually show something that many people outside the region, outside Israel and the Palestinian and the Arab world, don't get to see, and that is the large number of people in Israel who want something to progress, who want to take a different approach, who don't want it to be just a case of enemies up against each other the whole time?
Absolutely. So Budrus is our second film. Julie and I worked together on a film prior to this called Encounterpoint. And when we toured the world, we toured 200 cities. The question that we constantly got was, where is the Palestinian nonviolence movement? Predominantly from American audiences, from the West, from Israeli audiences. And it was clear to us that they hadn't been exposed to this kind of story. And at the same time, as we told this story, people expressed real shock that there were Israelis willing to put their bodies on the line to support the courageous actions of the village of Budrus. So I think that this film manages to shatter all kinds of preconceived notions about who exactly is active in the region and what they're doing.
Ayed Morrar, salam and welcome. And I wonder, when you look at what happened, we watched the story unfold in the film, how surprised were you at the success of the non-violent approach of the protests?
We choose non-violent struggling in Budrus because we need everybody all around the world to support us, to help us to achieve our normal and simple targets, freedom and real peace. So I am so happy that my message arrived through this movie to American people here and all around the world. We just want to tell them that we aren't against anybody, we just against the occupation. Our right, our duty to struggle against this occupation, to put all the sources of pressure except killing on the occupation till achieving our targets, our freedom and real peace.
Well, yeah, Ayed, you managed to stop the wall going through the land and tearing up all the olive trees and destroying the lands that you've had for so long. But I wonder, how were the people of Budrus changed by the experience they went through? When you look at what happened before the protests and then what happened after, how have the people of the village changed?
The Palestinian people, all of them, not just in Budrus, glad to take role in our resistance against the occupation. The non-violence is a good opportunity for them to struggle through. The kids, they have a role, the women, the old people, everybody have role in non-violent struggle to struggle. And we were sure that sooner or later we will succeed to save our land because it's not a security wall, it's just a wall to confiscate our land, to uprooting our olive trees, and we will do the best in order to stop them. And after that, we managed to stop them on the ground.
Julia, I know, as you're aware, we take viewer questions on the show, so I'm going to put an email to you we got through our Facebook page from Mohammed Bashir. And Mohammed wrote in saying, for decades, Palestinians have tried using both dialogue and force to try to end the illegal occupation, but it still continues. The occupation will end only when Israel's trading partners decide to impose an economic embargo. Of course, our viewer there thinks much stronger action is needed, but really, when you look at what might be achieved through the film, how much of a difference do you think you can make?
How much do I think what happened in Budrus can make?
Yes, and telling the story worldwide.
Yeah, I think that the story has not been told. I think that it's true that there has been many things tried before, but I do believe that there is a lack of awareness about this among the international community. And that's why I really wanted to make a film that told the stories through personal people, through really empathizing with the people who are trying to stand up for their rights using a method that empowers many members of their society. And I think when people see that story, and we've seen it happening in many film festivals around the world, and I'm hoping that it continues to happen through wider distribution, it's like people are shocked that their media hasn't been telling them their stories. And I think there's going to be a demand after they see the film to learn more, to want to get from their media this type of information. Nonviolent resistance requires the international community to apply pressure. And I think that has been a missing element of every effort so far that has been tried. So while it's true that a lot of things have been tried, I believe that the missing link right now has been international community pressure, awareness, and participation on the movement.
Now, Ronit, I wonder why this story hasn't been told before, considering it's not anything new. I mean, the Palestinian people have been having their lands uprooted, and the wall has been going up for a while, and there has been a lot of disruption. Why has it taken so long for the story to be told?
I think that stories of nonviolent struggle are difficult to tell. They take time. They're not easy to encapsulate in a headline or a photo. So there were instances where media came to Budrus to document the demonstrations as they were happening. but people didn't go back to find out what happened in the end. And that takes a kind of a patience and a determination to really get behind the story and to understand what's going on, what are the strategies, and what are the outcomes. And I think the documentary is actually an ideal medium to be able to have that kind of patient commitment to telling the story. And that's why we wanted to add our piece to this mix.
Ayed Morrar, many times in the documentary, Palestinians, you can hear them saying they could never have imagined an Israeli standing side by side with them to try to resist what was happening, you know, by the Israeli forces to defend Palestinian land. And they say that they could never have imagined making Israeli friends. Have you, after this experience, have you made lots of deep, warm friendships with Israelis? Has it changed the way you view Israelis?
Before popular struggle in Budrus, we didn't manage to see the Israelis just as a settlers or as soldiers before that. But in Budrus, we managed to see the good face of the Israelis. A lot of the Israelis people who are against the occupation, feeling that we are still suffering under the occupation, and we have right to get support from them. They start struggling with us, and they were able to pay a price of their struggling. So many of them get injured, many of them get arrested from the Israeli occupation, and we appreciate highly. We have a warm feeling toward those people who are came to support us toward a peace, a real peace, and freedom.
Listen, I want to ask you to all stand by. We're going to take a very short break here, but we have more of our discussion on Budrus in just a moment. Welcome back. We're looking at an acclaimed documentary film which depicts how peaceful protests by Palestinians in a small West Bank village forced the Israeli government to reroute its separation wall. The film, Budrus, named after the village, raises the prospect of Palestinians achieving real results through a non-violent struggle against the Israeli occupation. And I'm talking with filmmaker Julia Bacha, who's the director and producer of Budrus, Israeli activist and writer Ronit Avni, who's executive producer of the documentary, and Ayed Morrar, who led the peaceful protests in Budrus and is now an advocate for non-violent resistance in the Palestinian territories. Julia, back with a question here from a viewer, if I can put this to you, from Mubarak Keder, who wrote in saying, passive resistance alone will not solve the main problems the Palestinians are facing now. I want to get your take on what else needs to be done to try to take the example of Budrus further, to try to create some real kind of change on the ground on a larger scale.
I think we've seen historically that nonviolent movements have been able to create change. And I think that the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, although it's very unique and has specific characteristics, it's the same as every other conflict in terms that everyone has a specificity. But the power of people to take control of their own lives and to apply pressure through direct action, through really organizing your community and mobilizing in a way that is inclusive of different members and of people who might not actually be natural allies. I think that what happened in Budrus, that they managed to see, they had a vision that there are many people who can get involved, and that they need 100% of not only their population, but also of all the allies that they can get to participate in this struggle. And I do believe that slowly, and it's something that is it's in a fragile state right now in the West Bank and in East Jerusalem and a little bit in Gaza. This movement is just starting right now. And I think that if people pay attention, and we're hoping the film can help with that the movement can get stronger and ultimately achieve the results of ending the occupation and building peace in the region.
Ronit, what response has there been in America from those who've seen the movie? What has been the response of Americans who've got an insight to something they usually never see?
This week marks our North American premiere at the Tribeca Film Festival. So this has been the first time that we've been able to interact with American audiences in the theaters. It's been overwhelmingly positive, every screening so far. Ayed Morrar has been with us, and he's received a standing ovation. And as Julia mentioned, there really is a sense of surprise. There is a sense of inquisitiveness on the part of the audiences. It's a story they haven't seen before. Some people demonstrate a real sense of relief that this exists, this movement exists. Some people have energy to want to join, and other people are a little bit taken aback. I think it's uncomfortable. Nonviolent movements, because of the legitimacy and the power that they propose and that they have the potential for, can make some people a little bit uncomfortable.
Ayed Morrar, the interesting thing about this protest was it really involved the women and the young people of the village. How again has that changed the way the village works and the voice that the women and the young people have? How has that changed the way they approach Israel and the occupation?
One from our slogans we are struggling under them, that the big problem needs big effort. So if we want to achieve 100% from our target, we must use 100% from our power. The women in Palestinian society contains 50% from our people. So we just open the doors in front of them. We feel that the women in Palestine are so strong, and in all of our struggling history against the occupation, they took a very good role in our struggling. In Budrus, we discovered that the Palestinian women they weren't prepared to stay in the kitchen preparing food for the heroes while they are coming back from the battle. They want themselves to be strugglers, and we just open the doors in front of them. And the kids also in popular struggle and non-violent struggle, they have chance also to be with us. We were seeing many women carrying their children on their chests, or many men they were carrying their children on their shoulders in demonstrations. So all of them were proud to take role in our struggling. It's really amazing, and makes sense also.
Now, Julia, another question, if I may, here, please, for you. This came in from a regular viewer, Barnabas Mavuti, who wrote in saying, passive resistance might have worked in the case of Budrus. However, non-violent movements take a long time. If the Palestinians resort to peaceful protests, Israel can buy time and frustrate them as much as possible. What sense did you get that the Israelis themselves, watching what was happening, were shocked and might not be so tolerant when it comes to dealing with another village that also tries the same thing?
Yes, it's nonviolent struggle. It's hard. I think Ayed Morrar always says that to use nonviolence is much harder, requires much more courage, much more bravery than using violent methods. So you're absolutely correct. These processes take time, but ultimately they lead to societies that are more democratic. They lead to societies that hopefully, in this case, through the participation of women in the struggle, will allow for women to have a bigger role in power, hopefully with the political parties having to organize together. The end result will be that these political parties can learn that they can disagree, but that they have a larger common goal. And also the participation of Israelis in these demonstrations creates an opportunity for people who have not met but will have to share the land in the end to recognize the rights, the dignity of the other. And when peace comes, this will be a long-term peace and not just a ceasefire. So nonviolent struggle creates the ability for all of these elements to ultimately bring a society that is more in par with, I think, what would benefit everyone all over the world.
Ron, an interesting thing about this movie is it essentially humanizes the Palestinians. Many people discuss the issue of news stories generally dehumanizing the players in this conflict. And I wonder to what degree you think that has made the difference to actually humanize the Palestinian people in such a way through a very candid behind-the-scenes exposure of the characters.
Absolutely. I think one key strength of this film is that it really humanizes the protagonists. They're real people. Ayed is a father, Iltizam is his daughter. They have a community that's facing a major challenge, and we wanted people to see it from that perspective, to understand what was going on and what were the choices that they faced. So we wanted to humanize the Palestinian protagonists and also the Israelis involved. We didn't want to dehumanize anybody, but we also wanted to show what were the proactive concrete and constructive steps that this village was taking in order to defend itself and protect its rights.
And Ayed Morrar, tell me about what your next steps are. You've managed to achieve a victory in Budrus and stop the wall going through the village. Now you've become an activist and a promoter of non-violence. What are your next steps? What will you be involved with?
Our way is very long. I hope soon we will achieve our targets, freedom and real peace. We aren't against anybody. We aren't against Jews. We aren't against the Israelis. We're just against the occupation. As much as the occupation exists on our land, we will keep struggling. I think that even the occupier, if we are kept silent against it, they will never respect us or apologize us. We must keep struggling. We thought that the non-violent struggling is the shortest and the easiest way to achieve our targets. So we will keep going, we will keep struggling non-violently, honestly, toward our targets, freedom and real peace.
Julia, a quick thought with 30 seconds to go. What sort of follow-up is there on the story of Budrus? Do you get to go back and see how things change now that they've managed to get this victory?
We actually had an amazing screening of the film Budrus in the village in March, and we decided that it was important to go back to the village as the first screening in the West Bank. And being there was incredible to see the energy that the village got from the screening itself. Right. And you know, Ayed is talking about continuing the struggle, and it's very true. A week later, after the screening of the film, they organized another demonstration again, this time right. in solidarity with the other villages, and trying to really forge a national movement.
Well, I want to thank you all, and good luck with Tribeca. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Riz.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us too. Now remember, you can follow the show on Facebook and see what we're up to there. You can give us feedback on the topics and post your questions and comments. On the next show, the political standoff in Canada over the Afghan war. After a 5-month battle with the government, the opposition will get to see uncensored files on the fate of those detained by the Canadian military in Afghanistan. What risk is there? The information in those documents could spark a political crisis in Canada. That's it from me and the team in Washington. See you next time.